option this afternoon or shortly after lunch. We have the objections noted, and we need to put some scheduling issues, get those nailed down. And at the time, I think we said, we're going to put you in a little bit of a box, Mr. Jorde, and that I apologize for it. So at the time we said, do you want some more time to think about it? And so what we want to try to get a sense of now is at the time after 5:30, would you prefer to work on a couple witnesses, or would you prefer to take a step back tonight and contact some of your clients and see if they are available virtually next week?
I do frankly have, including Miss Erickson, probably 3 more people I'd really like to get done with today, that have, been driving hours and hours back and forth, and I really want to get them on and off today. So I don't know if it's mutually exclusive. I think we should try to do that, and then over the 1 hour break, I'll do my best to see what I can come up with regarding virtual. But my top priority would be to get these folks on that have been waiting today, on and off.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Sorry to put you on the spot on that one.
That's okay.
All right. Well, hopefully everybody took notes that we're going to stay on point. Mr. Jorde?
Yep. Thank you. I call Nancy Erickson. Thank you.
Okay. Sorry, one quick question. Can you raise your right hand, please? Thank you. Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is true and accurate?
Yes, I do.
Thank you. Mr. Jorde?
Yes, thank you. Can you please state your name?
Nancy Erickson.
And Nancy, you are what's known as an Exhibit H targeted landowner for eminent domain by Summit, is that correct?
Yes.
And what county is your land in?
Kasuth.
And you have one parcel, I think, that's targeted, is that right?
Yes.
And you have previously caused to be filed what was known as pre-filed testimony, question and answer, and you included a series of attachments or exhibits to that testimony, correct?
Yes.
And then since that deadline in July, you have also added, I believe, 2 or 3 additional hearing exhibits, is that right?
That's correct.
And if we went through the pre-filed testimony, the questions and answers, and asked you all those same questions, other than maybe some typos, would you give predominantly substantially the same answers?
Yes, I would.
Before we offer your exhibits, do you have anything that stands out as a correction or update that you think is absolutely necessary for the board to know?
Not about my testimony.
Okay. Then in that case, I would offer on Ms. Erickson's behalf her pre-filed testimony and attachments, which are Landowner Exhibit 293, 294, 298, 590, and 607.
Are there objections?
No objection.
All right. Seeing no objections, the board will admit.
Great, thank you. And with that, I'll tender you for cross. Folks might have some questions of you.
Okay, can I make one statement? Since it caused confusion when my husband and I arrived. His last name is Swartz, S-W-A-R-T-Z. First name Daniel, goes by his middle name Doug. We do not have the same last name.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, and so all of your testimony is in conjunction with your husband, Daniel, correct?
Correct.
All right, very good, thank you. I'll tender the witness for cross.
Thank you. Mr. Taylor, do you want your usual spot?
I guess. First of all, for the record, what were those two hearing exhibits, 590 and 607? Thank you. Ma'am, I'm Wally Taylor. I represent the CR Club. And can we pull up the KMZ map? Does this map show your property and the proposed route of the pipeline?
Yes, it does.
In the southwest portion of your property and on up the west side, it looks like there's a green area. What is that?
That's pasture ground. The pipeline will cut our pasture ground in half. We have water on the south end. The north end has shade. That's also where the electricity comes from for the electric fence. When they want to install the pipeline, they will be tearing out our fences there. We will lose electricity to the south end of the pasture and have concern about the cattle getting out. We also have concern that they don't have shade when they're on that end. Of course, if they're stuck on the north end, then they don't have access to water. That's 4 Mile Creek that runs through our pasture.
So the 4 Mile Creek is that sort of diagonal area that runs through the southwest part of your property?
Yes.
Okay. Has Summit said that they would repair your electric fence?
I don't know what we're supposed to do when they're working there, if we will be responsible, or if our tenant, I should say our tenant. We have tenants for the pasture and we have tenants for the crop ground. Summit doesn't know about the tenants because they blocked my phone number when I tried to call them and tell them.
You tried to call whom? Summit?
Yeah, they had a number to call on their 10-day survey notice, and my number's still blocked to today, that I cannot call them on that number. It says you are not allowed to call this number.
So did Summit survey on your property?
We allowed them to survey because we knew they could get an injunction. I decided to accept the 10-day survey notice because if I had waited for the injunction, then they would have been running through our tenant's crop ground, and I absolutely did not want that. So they did come in April and survey. They sent 3 armed guards to watch my husband and me as we followed the survey crew around. I'm not even 100 pounds. I don't know what they thought I was going to do.
It looks like also in the lighter portion in the upper northwest, maybe 2/3 or so of the property, are there some waterways or something there?
That's where tile line from surrounding farmers drains through our pasture, but that dries up in the summer.
Have you talked to any Summit land agents or representatives about the impacts to your property from the pipeline?
Yes, we talked to Jason York, who's not listed on Summit's contact list. We talked to Wes Patterson, who's not listed on Summit's contact list.
By Summit's contact list, what do you mean?
They filed on the IUB website all the landowners' names and all the contacts people had made with them, and those names aren't listed.
Okay. So what did you talk with them about?
Well, when we first got notice in August, I tried calling Summit Carbon Solutions, but they didn't have a phone number on their website, so I called Summit Ag and left a voicemail, and I eventually got calls back from Kansas City, Texas, Minnesota, all people claiming to be with Summit, even though they tout that they're an Iowa-based company, I never got a call from someone in Iowa. I was trying to figure out where the pipeline was going, and they finally told me in November it was actually 400 feet south of my property. It wasn't even on my property. Then at the end of January, there was some guy, we didn't recognize his vehicle, messing around with our mailbox. My husband yelled at him to get away from our mailbox. And he said he was just trying to put some papers in there. And my husband yelled at him and said, "You can't do that. That's not legal." And so then he wanted to come up and talk to us. He had Texas plates, said he was a land agent for Summit, still couldn't figure it out because it's not going on our property. And Summit, once again, has told us they're an Iowa-based company, so we don't understand. He finally informs us the pipeline has been moved and it's going on our property.
So initially, the pipeline wasn't going on your property, so how did you even know about it?
They had sent me a notice. Apparently it was close enough, but we really didn't understand because my brother, who lives a mile north of me, also got a notice it was going on property north of him, which is over a mile away from this proposed route. So we really didn't understand where it was going.
So you were on what they call the corridor, perhaps?
I think we were on the original corridor. I don't know what my brother Martin was on, but he received notice too of it going north of his house, well over a mile from this route down here.
Is there any tile on your property?
Yes, there is.
Can you give us a sense of where that would be? You might have to hold it up higher.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, right here. I'm not good at saying where stuff is located on the map, especially since I get confused on north, south, east, west. So if you want to help me right
Sure.
there.
That would be along that ephemeral waterway you were talking about in the southeast corner of your property, correct?
There's a 12-inch clay tile that goes right here. My tenant put a plastic tile right next to it, but he informs me the clay tile is functioning. It will go through that. They also, my tenant does tiling himself, ran lines that run north and south here to that tile line that goes kind of east to west. And then it drains down into the pasture. There's tile there. And then there's another, this area right here. I don't know how you describe that. There's tile there too.
Okay, that's the other ephemeral waterway you were talking about.
Right, that will be cut by the pipeline.
Okay. Do you know how old that tile is?
The clay tile, no. Some of these lines, other lines were put in by my tenant maybe 5 years ago.
Are there any residences that are close to the pipeline route?
Yes, if you can move the map to the north. That's my nephew there. He's 750 feet away from the pipeline that he doesn't want. And then our house is the next one. We are 1,500 feet from the pipeline.
Okay. So where's the nearest emergency management personnel?
That would be in Algona. We are about 5 miles away. I am a volunteer with the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center. We work behind the scenes in a disaster and assist the people at the disaster site. You know, we get them people they need, we get them equipment they need, supplies, that kind of thing. I had talked to our emergency management director about a pipeline rupture, and she had first told me that all they would do was cordon off the area. They wouldn't go in. When I checked with her on Monday, she told me there was a lot of variables, so they don't know what the response would be right now. I am 5 miles away. My husband died in 1996. We have a volunteer ambulance department. Currently, I believe now, at this time, I think there's 2 permanent people that are paid. The rest are volunteers, but it was all volunteer when my husband died in my arms in 96. I had to do CPR on him. My husband left when he was alive. He liked scanners, so I could hear them on the scanner paging the ambulance, telling them that CPR was in progress. I heard him repage the ambulance because people hadn't shown up to the crew. I ended up doing CPR for almost 30 minutes before the ambulance arrived at my door. I don't know if any IUB members have ever done CPR, but it is absolutely exhausting. It was horrible trying to continue doing CPR and waiting that long for an ambulance to arrive. We are a double county. We are twice the size of any other county. The deputy sheriff on duty that night was at the north end of the county. It took him over 40 minutes to arrive. He arrived after the ambulance. Had he been at the south end of the county, he could have helped me do CPR. So I don't know what time, what kind of response they'll have to a CO2 pipeline. Not sure.
So with a volunteer department, it depends on how quickly they can round people up to respond.
Correct.
In the crop portion of your property, do you rent that out or?
Yes. We had a high school kid working for us when Les died, and I rented to him. We drew up a 3-year lease, written lease, and after that, it's always been a handshake. Doug and I are godparents to one of his children. We have a great working relationship with him.
Did your tenant express any concerns about the soil and the crop production as a result of the pipeline?
Yes, he has. He knows it will be reduced.
Can we put up Exhibit 590? See what that is. It looks like an appraisal report.
We paid $1,200 to get an appraisal of our land. We absolutely cannot get liability insurance. We have exhausted all means. I even went out to the Lloyd's of London website, found out I can't contact them directly to get liability insurance, but there was a form where you could fill out what you wanted. And so I told them about the hazardous CO2 pipeline. They send that out to different insurance companies. They give those companies my name, my phone number, my mail address, and my email address. They gave me a copy of every company they contacted. I have not heard from any of those companies to this date. We currently have American Family Insurance. We think they're a great company. They've been wonderful to work with. However, I do have a pollution exclusion in our policy. I was searching online last week for American Family and pollution exclusion. I found a court case in Kansas where a homeowner was denied coverage due to the pollution exclusion. This guy had sold his dental practice. He had kept a little 2 tablespoons of mercury in his home. The fire was confined to the basement. That mercury was burned, and the smoke from the fire carried that mercury through his house. Now, American Family was willing to pay for the fire damage, but they would not pay anything for the pollution caused by the mercury. And the homeowner took him to court. The homeowner lost. American Family won. The pollution exclusion was upheld. At that point, we knew we could not get liability insurance. And so we have made the decision that we are going to sell those 40 acres. I don't want to. Les and I put our heart and soul, our blood, sweat, and tears into owning this land. When he died in my arms in 96, I still had a loan I had to pay on this land. I worked my butt to get that loan, and everything paid off on the farm. And now it's being taken from me by Summit because they want to put a pipeline through, and I can't get liability insurance. We've actually found a buyer. He has an LLC. Maybe that will help him. Maybe he can file bankruptcy like Summit and not have to, or like even the Denbury pipeline. When they had a rupture in Satartia, they just filed bankruptcy. Maybe he can get insurance. I don't know, but he is willing to buy the land from us. He told us he bases what he pays for it on the sale of surrounding land. So we had an appraisal done, and it showed our 40 acres is worth $472,000 based on the sale of similar properties. We talked to him about what a discount would be with the pipeline on the property. And he wasn't quite sure, so I just flat out asked him if it would be 30%. And he said, no, it won't be quite that high. There'll definitely be a discount, but not quite 30%. So we're assuming it's 25%, which is a $118,000 loss. $118,000 economic loss when we are forced to sell this property that I don't want to sell due to the pipeline, due to lack of liability insurance. And, you know, you multiply that economic loss. Our neighbor's Denny Frieders, he hasn't signed an easement either. He has wonderful crop ground. It's all crop. It's not part pasture like us. His is pattern tiled. I don't know what his loss would be, but it would be a lot more than mine. And you multiply that by 680, 700 miles of pipeline, that is a devastating loss across the state of Iowa for this hazardous pipeline, one that goes nowhere right now. It hasn't been improved in North Dakota, and I don't see any economic benefit to it.
Is there anything else on Exhibit 590 that pertains to your property that we haven't talked about? Can we scroll down?
I don't think so. It was done by a certified land appraiser. We paid $1,200 for this appraisal.
Okay. All right. Let's go to Exhibit 607.
This was a lawsuit.
Oh, that's that Kansas case you were talking about.
That's correct.
Okay. So you've already talked about that. I think that's all the questions I have.
Thank you. Are there questions from anyone else? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Jorde, redirect.
Yep. Did you say armed guards or just guards?
We're pretty sure they were armed. We are pretty sure. Just the way they carried themselves, the way they acted. We're pretty sure they were armed guards. There was one walking with us in the field, and there was 2 or 3 out on the road.
And what were the people out on the road doing?
Watching us. Never took their eyes off of us.
Have you done anything up until that point in time? Did you make any threats or in violent nature to Summit or any of their employees?
No.
Okay, what do you attribute that 5, 6, or however many people were there to do a survey?
I caught one surveyor on our property and told him to get off. That's all. He was standing at the fence line going to cross onto our property. We saw him on Frieder's ground. I rode out there on the gator and told him he was not allowed on our property.
And
that was before we got the 10-day survey notice.
Okay, so other than that, had you had in-person interactions with Summit, either land agents wanting to acquire or on the survey side?
The interaction with Jason York, he showed up on the day it was below 0, wearing nothing but a sweatshirt. Doug and I were dressed for the weather outside. He really complained about us keeping him outside in the cold weather. I couldn't figure out why he didn't put on a winter coat, put on a hat. I mean, there's hardly anything to me, and I was tolerating the cold weather because I was dressed for it.
So beyond that, to the substance of the conversation, was there any threats about eminent domain at that time?
I don't think at that time.
Okay. Did that ever occur?
Objection. State the objection.
Not within the scope of the cross-examination.
Mr. Jorde.
Well, I'm just trying to get through the interactions relative to the armed guard interactions, and curious if any threats were ever made.
No.
Okay, well, I guess. Okay, I'll move on. So you say you're going to take about $118,000 loss.
Yes.
And that the only reason you're selling is because you don't want the pipeline. So my question is, why wouldn't you just negotiate a payment from Summit for $118,000 or more? Wouldn't that make you feel better?
Not really. Number one, we were only offered a little over $29,000 for the property. Number two, I don't want a hazardous pipeline on my property. I know I know it's up to the board to stop it. I have downloaded the Aloha software. I worked at our local hospital for 33 years. I was the IT manager there. I know how to run software. I had to learn all different kinds of software working at the hospital. The software is designed to be used by emergency responders to determine where the plume will go. I use that software, and I did the plume study for our home. I know I will die in about 4 minutes if there's a pipeline rupture on my property. I know my nephew and his wife will die. I also did studies a little farther to the east that show it reaching the edge of Algona if it ruptures. I did a study outside the town of Whittemore and shows it reaching the town of Whittemore and also the campground at Seams Park if it ruptures there. This is a horrible idea to allow it to be that close to houses. I know our neighbor to the east wanted to testify here. He was not allowed because it's not on his property, but it's 1,325 feet from his home. Right across that pipeline, Matt Dornbeer wanted to be here to testify because it's 190 feet from his confinement building. If it ruptures there, it will kill Kim and Jeff and Matt. And I don't know how the IUB board can live with themselves if they allow this permit for this pipeline, if they allow eminent domain, and then they see on the news that Jeff and Kim Arrowwood were killed, that Matt Dornbeer was killed in a pipeline rupture. How can you sleep at night? How can you look in the faces of Matt's wife, of Matt's children, of Matt's mom and dad, of Matt's brother and sister, knowing that you allowed this hazardous pipeline to be 190 feet from his hog confinement building, and he was not allowed to come here to testify because it's not on his property. This is dangerous.
So I just want to make sure we have those names correct. So the gentleman that has a hog confinement 190 feet from the proposed pipeline, what exactly was his name?
Matt Dornbeer, Dornbier.
Dornbeer. Matt, you said Matt Dornbeer?
Matt, M-A-T-T.
Okay, and then the folks, your neighbors that would have it 1,325 feet from their home.
That's Jeff and Kim Arrowwood, A-R-R-O-W-O-O-D.
Okay, great, thank you. I don't have any further questions for you.
Thank you. We appreciate it. Mr. Jorde, it's 5:23. Do you want to do another one? We could go till 6.
Yeah, maybe we might be able to squeeze one in. Let me just
I'm
check.
being told I don't have that option.
Oh, never mind.
Sorry.
Okay, forget it.
Yeah, sorry.
It's fine.
Who will we call? If it's subject to change, that's fine too.
Well, I think David Gerber, and what I'd like to do is David Gerber, Casey Schumacher, and if at all possible, Nancy Conrad. I mean, it might be subject to change, but definitely David Gerber